Yep, we'll catch you. Yeah. Thank you to all our participants. We have from Citizens for Global Solutions, Marina Jimenez Malgosa.
Yeah.
Over to you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you all for this space and for giving us the opportunity to contribute to this necessary reform process. As a 21 years old woman, I feel very privileged to have a voice in these consultations. And from my perspective as a university student in Spain about to finish my studies, entering the world of work sometimes seems more scary than exciting. Youth unemployment is, specifically in Spain, the rates are over 30% of youth unemployment, but it is not an isolated case. All over the world, 2022 closed with 14.9% of youth unemployment rate. So the UN have reported that it is a difficulty that face people between 18 and 24 years old that must be addressed, and entering the labor market shouldn't be this unequal, like this difficult. So there are many disparities also between regions. We have been talking today in the regional panel about the disparities and how the issues should be addressed differently between regions, because, for example, in Europe, Central Asia, the rates are about 20 or 20.5%, while in Latin America, it goes up to a 25%. So creating incentives for talented people and young people must be high in the international agenda. And to this effect, ensuring paid internships as a bridge to the world of work should also be in the UN agenda. Other organizations that we have today mentioned, like the European Union, has already condemned unpaid internships. They have developed directives talking about how this is a mean of exploitation and a violation of labor rights and human rights. So they are actually taking action to contribute to finish this widespread practice. So this is precisely what I asked for the UN and what I advocate for in my paper. So in my paper, first, I start highlighting a sentence from a book that is called Third World Approaches to International Law, that it's powerful states exercise dominance in the international system through the world of ideas, not just through the use of force. So this powerful phrase captures like the main consequences of these unpaid internships in the international organizations, such as the United Nations, that they are crowded of graduates from wealthy families from the global north, as they are the only ones who can afford to live in most expensive cities in the world, such as New York or Geneva. So as Secretary General in our common agenda proposed, we need to believe, like young people need to believe that we have a stake in society, but we need to see that society believes and invests in us, regardless where we're born. So in this respect, the issues of exclusion and underrepresentation, both in international organizations and international courts, internships due to financial constraints have not received proper attention. According to the National Association of Colleges and Employers, an internships can be defined as a form of experiential learning that integrates knowledge and theory learned in the classroom with the practical application and skills development in a professional setting. They give the students the opportunity to gain valuable applied experience and make connections in professional fields that they are considering for career paths. And they give employers the opportunity to guide and evaluate talent. I want to focus on this talent word because what if talent depended on your race, gender, family backgrounds, or country of origin? Internship, we all agree that should act as gateways, but the lack of funding for living in these expensive cities sometimes makes talent depend of sitting on a gold mine. So it creates large bias towards elite and wealthy, wealth-connected and wealthy youth. So since its beginnings, it's not new. The UN has addressed the economic inequality issue. It's been many times said that one of the greatest discrimination in this world is discrimination by rich people against poor people. So far from taking action to be a role model in this problem and to start promoting paid and also quality internships, the UN has opted to maintain high levels of, high percentages of their internships unpaid, almost 81% of the internships are right now unpaid, and the remaining 19% are so like the salaries are that low that it makes barely like impossible to survive in places such as New York or Geneva, where most of the opportunities are located. So indeed, according to several indices, New York and Geneva are the second and the third most expensive cities in the world. There are also indices that place New York at the first position. So given the location of these headquarters, the only people who can afford to take an internship here would be those whose families can provide sufficient funds for it, those who live close to the cities where the opportunities are located, and those who have the opportunity to obtain funding from a third party. Like, for example, in Germany, there's the Carlos Meets program that they provide many funds, but they basically give it to the German people. So it reproduces inequalities, like, one more time. So for the goal of listening, we've been like talking all these 2 days about listening and working with the youth, but the UN cannot afford to get this goal attached, maintaining the current system of internships. There are some agencies, as the WHO, that have already taken some measures. For example, since January 2020, I think, yeah, they provide medical and accident insurance coverage to some of their interns, just if they can show and prove that they cannot afford it by themselves. But even though there's something or some steps being made, there's a long way to go. So one of the first attempts that it was like a report that it was written in 2009. So this topic has been talked for a long time now. It was that offering support measures to alleviate this funding problem was something really important for the interns in order to accept or not an intern. But at the same time, the inspectors who wrote this report rejected the idea of providing any stipend because they argue that the interns were already receiving some type of I don't know how to say, like some type of returning, such as prestige or networking or experience about working with people in the UN. So even knowing that the compensation is one of the deciding topics or one of the main issues for interns once they are offered a position, the report supported it only in form of daily mail, vouchers, transport subscriptions, and maybe contribution to insurance spending, such as the WHO that we were talking about. So this is so only like people with extreme poor conditions will be the ones getting them. So it is not solving the problem. However, there was a new report in 2018, and they carried out this report talking about the necessity to establish a set of good practices in the UN for its prestige, because there was some, like, a guy who accepted, I guess you all remember this case, but it was a student who accepted an internship in Geneva, but he couldn't afford the housing. So he moved to the UN headquarters in a tent. So he was living in a tent out of the UN headquarters. So he received a lot of media attention. So after that, the UN was very criticized about this precise topic. So they decided to at least create this report and put the topic on top of the table again. And in this report, there's an interesting recommendation that I think that it could be taken in order to start at least solving the problem. That it is, instead of considering interns as gratis personnel in terms of staff categories inside of the UN system, we could ask the General Assembly to create a new specific category for interns it would be like a first step towards the introduction of a salary for the interns, or at least a compensation for basic expending and basic life cost. So this will be a way of creating UN, or not UN, but all internships as a door opener for young people that really believe that they are talented and they believe that the UN is a way of creating a better world. So by solving the problem of financial compensation, it is not only a way of solving how the inequalities are perpetuating worldwide, but it also may promote another organizations such as the international courts that we were talking about to follow this role model that the UN would be playing. And for example, the international courts would adopt also minimum wages to interns and young professionals. But another issue is how where that money is going to come is the never-ending story. So the main problem is that there are already organizations such as international courts, indeed, like International Court of Justice or International Criminal Court, that they are providing some salaries, but they depend on donations from states. This is the case of the ICC, that their salaries depend on how much each state apports to the funding. Or in the case of the ICJ, it depends on nominated university of applicants. So the problem of both of these cases is that most of the interns end coming from Western countries. For example, in the ICJ case, 90% of the interns were from Western countries. Only one intern was from Latin America, and 8 were from the Asian Pacific region. So then this unequal distribution of the internships, and more in the cases of international courts, it ends biasing the work of the international courts and affecting the construction of international law ultimately. So there's also, we've been talking today about the problem of future generations and the ones who are not still alive. So there's a lack of trust in international organizations among young people. And if young people perceive that these organizations, by the way they are providing the jobs, are also reproducing current inequalities, the loss of trust will continue and will grow exponentially. So, and also like another curious data is that there are many administrations in the UN that they constantly report that the most promising young people working in their offices, many of the times they leave to private sector because they have better options, better opportunities. So this is like all this information makes it super clear that we need urgent action, that urgent action must be taken to ensure that having a work experience in such a place as the UN, it is not just for the privileged one, and it is open for all the youth in the world. So as long as the UN and other organizations privilege these positions for those with the resources to support themselves in 2 of the most expensive cities in the world, as New York, Geneva. Finally, the ones who will be getting those positions will be the ones who can afford it and not necessarily the best ones. And making the UN accessible and attractive to all these motivated, young, talented people should be a priority, because we cannot like waste all the potential that they hide and could be implemented in the world. And we cannot close the door to all these people that really believe in the international system. So that'll be all.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Marina, for your findings, for your research, because I mean, everyone left in this room at this point in time is someone who's technically a youth ambassador or a youth change maker. And I believe one of the most pressing issues for all of us is that when we are looking for opportunities, they are unpaid. And what you also touched upon uh, in terms of what region do you belong to, and how that matters, because you can't just, I mean, everyone would love it if we could all just teleport to New York for free and show how talented we are, show how skilled we are, and what we can offer coming from a specific geographical space. But that's not how it works, because obviously there's a transportation cost, there's a living cost, and there's so much else associated with moving from one place to another, that even something as basic as a stipend becomes a necessity. Now, Gayatri Spivak wrote a paper where she asks, can the subaltern speak? And when this situation, and I say the subaltern, I'm only referring to how you also mentioned that if you are from specific communities, from specific classes, from specific parts of this world, you are more privy to receiving these opportunities. I did want to ask you, have you personally experienced any of these inconveniences as a student yourself, where an unpaid internship being unpaid is the only thing that denies you the opportunity that you are otherwise perfectly capable, skilled, and talented for?
Indeed, not in the UN, but I was offered a internship in the Hague, I think it's yeah, in Netherlands, in the Institute of Economics for the Peace Index. So I knew it would be a great option for me, but after being here in the States for 1 year studying, that would be like 2 extra costs. So I asked them if there was like any possibility of getting any not salary, but just like covering the basic costs, and they told me that it wasn't possible. So it's like, how do you want me to survive, or how do you want me to make life spending 2 months in another place, in another city, without getting this money?
Mm-hmm.
So
Right. Yeah.
we were also about you were just telling in the previous track. It was a financial architecture, and we were talking about how the prices of the flight tickets affect it was more focused on markets, but I think it can also be related with this issue, because finally, if people from Africa, for example, if a ticket to come to New York, it's over $2,000, they cannot afford it. But maybe for someone who lives in Europe, it is, I don't know, $600. I know it's still a lot of money, but obviously the difference make it more difficult for the African ones to come over. So if all these costs finally helps to maintain the inequalities, existing inequalities, and also push all these youth to a side. So
Yeah, absolutely. And are there any other questions that anyone would like to ask, either online or from our physical gathering here? Online, please feel free to raise your hands, to unmute yourselves if you want to make any comments and interjections. Yes, Sophia.
Thank you very much, Shahrukh. And thank you very much, Marina, for putting into numbers what a lot of you think. I constantly see on my LinkedIn page a lot of young people that are really talented, that are really driven, that has a lot of passion for what they do, but they cannot afford these opportunities. And I think even in these opportunities that comes related with the United Nations, and they enter to the workforce, having incredible opportunities that will boost our career, we're still talking when it comes to this, and also other things like education, that the place you are born into, it defines all the opportunities you won't have the rest of your life. I didn't have an internship at the United Nations. I'm part of a network that is one of the agencies of the UN, but a lot of people in Latin America see me in these spaces, in these conferences, and they say me, Sophia, seeing you there makes me hope that maybe I can be there too. It's like we already abandoned the possibility only because we live in Latin America and because we come from middle income families, not even talking about it, poor families and more marginalized group. We abandoned the idea of having these opportunities, and how, as you mentioned as well, the amount, the percentage of these internships and the places of the youth that acquire these internships are from the West, right?
yeah.
And how this also, as you mentioned, like The United Nations says they don't pay you maybe in money, but they can open other doors for you. And these are the young people that are going to be working with stakeholders in UN agencies at international spaces, only from their working and putting their ideas from their point of view. And where's the point of view of the most marginalized groups? Where's the point of view of the non-developed countries and how we can contribute to the table? Because we have a lot to put there. So I wanted to ask you regarding of this, what do you think when it comes to the vision of all of these young people that are being lost their vision in this space at the United Nations? How bad do you think this is?
I definitely think that it will have an impact on future decisions in the UN, but also in how the society perceive these organizations and the trust they have in them and the abilities they believe they have to solve their daily problems. Because maybe you think about the UN solving hunger as a very abstract idea, but you don't really understand how the UN can have an impact on your daily life. So while you were talking, I was thinking that one possibility to make to make the UN closer to the young people would be organizing this type of spaces, not only in the UN headquarters, but also in many other maybe capital cities, because I guess it's easier for everyone to get there, but in every single region to get a regional approach that can make easier for young people to get there, and it to be like a first step towards the UN. So yeah, that's.
Yeah, and it's a very important point that you've also raised, because when you mentioned about solving hunger, solving poverty, standing up for someone's human rights, standing up for stable democracy, the question arises that even if organizations cannot pay their interns, if they cannot give stipends or travel funding to their employees or their interns, the question arises, how are you going to fight poverty without the poor? How are you going to fight hunger without the hungry? How are you going to fight for someone's rights without having the rightless in your company, working and writing and researching for you? Which also raises the next, like, one thing that I wanted to just touch upon with your work, because I am very, like, I really admire, as I'm sure everyone else does, the amount of metrics that you have been able to gather regarding unpaid internships and employment at national organizations and the regions from which people come from who get these opportunities. But in terms of dignity, because it's at least been my personal experience that even if I'm just a first year student in my first semester of an undergrad, being an intern and getting something as basic as a monthly stipend provided me a very rare opportunity at not just having a contract, not just having an opportunity, but being provided the dignity of being someone's employee, being provided the respect I deserve for the work that I'm doing, which in turn made me respect my work more. So do you think that's a kind of effect that having a stipend can have? Or what other impact, what's the personal or social impact beyond just having the resources of a stipend? Because I feel like we have enough people on this call that who would also be able to take away from the need of having a stipend and its impact on us. And Sophia, you're also welcome to chime in on this one, because we're all sharing that here.
Yeah, I think the proposal made by the report, I was telling the idea of changing the category in which interns are located instead of gratis personnel to interns, for example, may lead also not just create a path to get these salaries, but also to respect more the work that interns can provide to every organization, not to see young people as a quota that must be fulfilled, but as a stakeholder that has a voice. And yeah, to make also these internships, or to increase the quality of these internships, like respecting the hours of working, respecting their voices, their opinions, like asking them to do proper work and not just, I don't know. I think we all know what we're talking about.
well,
So I think definitely changing the category in which any intern is placed would be a first step, not just to make all these costs covered by any stipend, but also making it more respectful. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think it's really interesting the question you made, Sharuk, because our common agenda says we young people have to be treated as equals, and be treated as equals. That means we have the knowledge, we have the capacity, we have the abilities they have, as Marina just mentioned, to be considered as stakeholders. So if we can put something important, interesting, innovative, solution, new ideas and solutions to the table, who should receive the salary the other person that works at the United Nations receive. So I think that is our common agenda, is the reason why we're here at the Global Futures Forum. And I think this solution to ensure that these internships are paid is one of the solutions we should strive for now that we're working in this, and now we're in this lead up to the Summit of the Future.
Absolutely. I was once at a talk where an Indian Muslim thinker imparted this quote where he said that human rights and fundamental rights are not when my rights are protected. It's when your rights are protected as well as mine. And seeing Marina's research and seeing the numbers behind it, seeing your passion behind it, this being a youth pavilion, this being a platform where most of us who come from the category that would classify as ripe unpaid intern material for international organizations, I can guarantee that seeing your research, I feel like somebody is standing up for all of us. And I feel like that we are in safe hands in terms of research insofar as that is concerned. So thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing all of this with us. Thank you, Sophia, for being here and sharing with us your experiences regarding the same. And thank you to all our participants for joining the Youth Pavilion at the Global Futures Forum. This brings us to the end of this session, and I would like to thank everyone for being here. The meeting has been recorded and it will be uploaded to our website. So a big cheer and a big holler to everyone who was a part of this Youth Pavilion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Did you like it?